Sure. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus Segal.
Hey guys. They're all leaving. Do you guys have to go to the bathroom as badly as I do? I've been sitting up here for a while. I am so happy to be here amongst you fellow entrepreneurs. How many of you are in the idea stage? How many of you are on your startup? You're working on a startup now. That's great. This is a fantastic time to be doing startups. We are in the greatest era, we're living in the greatest era of entrepreneurship in human history. The data isn't in yet, but we can all feel it. When I came to this conference last year, there were, by this point in the conference, because I think I was the last guy last time too, which I don't know what it says about me, but there was hardly anybody here. There was maybe a third of the people that are here now. And so as I see the audience growing, what I'm seeing also is that a bunch of people are awakening to the fact that, like, you don't have to go and get some shit job where you don't love what you do. Like, you can choose this other life, you can find an idea, you can chase it, and you can have an unreasonable amount of love for what you do. You can wear a t-shirt and jeans to work every day. You don't have to wear a tie ever. You don't have to suck up to anybody. You can create your own company. People can suck up to you. Not talking about you, Evan. Never you. Evan from Teespring. I love Evan. Anyway, so the title of my talk is Brain Droppings from an Old Man. That's me. I've been doing startups for 15 years now. And I'd love to share what I've learned. And I guess in all of these, the person with the clicker kind of gets into their life story a little bit. So for me, entrepreneurship started in college. Back then in ancient times, people had these videotapes. And there were videotapes for everything, like 8-minute abs and all this other stuff. And I was in college, and at that time, college in the U.S. is very expensive. There was a video series called Where There's a Will, There's an A, and it had this professor who would talk about how to take notes and stuff, and it was really boring, and I didn't connect with it at all. So a friend and I created The Secrets to College Success, and we interviewed college students about how to get along with their roommates and all the stuff that really screws you up, as opposed to like taking notes and stuff like that. And I didn't make a ton of money, but I caught the bug. And I learned a lot. I learned more from that experience than I did from the rest of the time that I was in college. To be fair, I majored in English. I already spoke English. I was already cheating. After working on that video and graduating from college, I went to Hollywood and I worked on bad movies like Beastmaster 3, Eye of Braxis. The Academy ignored our efforts, but one day, someone will pick this jewel up and realize what we did was important work. I also helped start a company called the Documedia Group, which no longer exists, and we made like 100 hours of TV for the History Channel and A&E. I did one called Secrets of War. I think they call it Sworn to Secrecy here. And while this was happening, though, I was realizing, I'm working on these documentaries telling the stories about what other people did, like what great people did in the past. And meanwhile, there's this thing happening with the internet, and I want to be a part of what's next, right? Like, that became a priority for me. So I started to get an MBA at night, because I thought, well, if I had an MBA, someone would hire me, even though I have a degree in English, the only language I speak, and the only thing I've worked on are documentaries and Beastmaster 3. So I start getting my MBA, and then the internet boom happens, and I'm running this production company, and now Silicon Valley is blowing up, kind of like it is now, and they have a shortage of what they call gray hairs. People who have experience running teams, people who have experience dealing with budgets and things like that. Well, when I was doing the documentaries, like, we're so short on money, they kind of let me do anything. Like, it was a great startup experience like that. They're like, yeah, sure, you can be in charge of the budget, even though I majored in English. And then I basically decided, okay, this is my time, and I started applying for jobs. And I'll never forget this. I was interviewing for jobs in LA, and the parent companies were all in San Francisco. And I had a home in LA and everything that I bought, and I was up there, and one of the people I interviewed with said, you really need to move up here, because what you really need to do is put yourself in the path of lightning. You need to put yourself on the path to where success can happen. And just like that, moved out of my house that I bought it like 6 months before, rented it out. I still have some stuff in the storage unit. It's been 15 years. I've never gone back. And I moved, you know. And one of the things that I think is so exciting now is that you don't have to do that anymore. You can build startups anywhere. I've traveled around the world last year just going to startup hubs, and everywhere I go, there are groups of people like this who have ideas and have the technical skill and have the marketing outreach to bring a product to market and sell it. So I ended up joining emusic.com. So back then, MP3 players were like the size of my shoe, and they held 100 songs. And I was like, yeah, and the battery lasted like 3 hours. I mean, they used like little Duracell batteries, MP3 players. But I thought we were going to change music forever, and we were right, but we were early, and we went public, and we were $23 or $24 a share, and I rode that baby down to 53 cents a share. And then we got acquired by Universal, who said that they were going to use us to be where music goes to die. Like basically all the back catalog stuff, they were going to give it to us. We're like, that's great. We can make a good business of that. And we let you, burn it onto CDs and all that stuff that Apple doesn't let you do. And we basically dodged a bullet, and the company actually still exists. Like, it got spun out and still a going concern. But, we made every mistake that you could make. Then I did a startup called Vendicio, which still exists. I worked on it. It's a billing and infrastructure security company. I worked on it for 5 years, and I joined that company to work with some of the guys from eMusic, and I joined it because everyone told me at that time, this is like 2003, that the only things that could make money, the only things that could get funded, and the only things that could make money were business to business. And so I was like, well, I want to make money, because that's what I was about. I had this ethos. It was almost like my life philosophy was like, get rich or go bald trying, which I guess it's kind of worked out. But, I went and worked at this company, and I would go out and I'd try and be excited about it, and I had a really tough time. I didn't believe in it in my heart. I wasn't excited to go solve billing and security problems, but that's what I was doing. And then while I was doing that, I would go out with the salespeople and try and sell our product into tech companies. And I would meet all of these different tech companies, and I was kind of like falling in love over and over again with everything that everyone else was doing. And as a matter of course, I've always tried to help people out. So after .com1, kind of eMusic time, when Silicon Valley really emptied out, everyone moved back to New York and stuff like that, where it's more fun. Those of us who stayed in technology, we all knew each other. It was like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon or something. And so I was being an advisor to other startups, and I was sort of the COO ops guy, and I would just share information with people, and I would review their leases or tell them what I thought about their decks and things like that. And over the years, I got a lot of shares in startups that failed. If you added all the money I made up from helping other people out, I could buy like a used Mini Cooper or something like that, like a 2004, not even anything new. But it didn't matter, because I just love helping people out, which is why I love coming to conferences and sharing. Then one of the companies that I was helping out, a friend of mine was starting, called Zynga. And Zynga had this great mission. They wanted to connect the world through games. They weren't the #1 app company on Facebook at the time. They were like number 4. There were a bunch of companies that don't even exist anymore, Playfish, a couple others. But, Mark Pincus had this beautiful vision. He said, look, Facebook has built this big room where we're all coming to hang out. But in this room, there's no music, there's no games, there's nothing that's going to make me stay. And so he wanted to bring the games to the party. And I started advising them, and I started playing the games, and we had a game called Pathwords. And I played it with my friend Jackie, and she said, hey, you know what? My mother, Roberta, she kicks my ass even worse than you do. I think you and my mother, Roberta, should play. So I became Facebook friends with a 77-year-old woman in New Jersey who I didn't know. And we started playing together. We started playing this game together. And that was magic for me. Because when we were children, our parents would sit on the floor with us, and we would play together. Like your parents would how many of you have kids now? Yeah, so for you guys, when you have to leave your children to go to work, that's painful. Like you wish you could just stay and hang out with them all day, but you don't get to. Then we get older and our relationship with our parents change and we stop playing. And that's when things get kind of sucky, right? And then hopefully you find play again later. You find a way to connect with them in that way again later. And that's magic. And we wanted to bring that into people's lives in little 5-minute bits. And we did. And we continue to try to improve on social and continue to drive. And I can tell you that when Roberta had a stroke and she died, and I felt it, I feel it now as if I lost a member of my own family and I never met her. Never in person. And that's how real these connections that we strive to form in our games are. And we've had people who've met on our forums and fallen in love and all this. And it's real for them and it's real for us. So I spent 6.5 years at Zynga, built it from, I was, a board advisor, then I think I was employee number, 40 or 50, scaled the thing up to 3,000 people, then made a whole bunch of mistakes, probably mistakes on the way up, but we didn't really see them coming because we were growing so fast, and that kind of growth really hides a lot of problems, right? But big problems that we had problems with promoting people to be managers without giving them management training. Then we had management training that was like one size fits all, as if the way that you manage an artist is the same way that you manage an engineer. Which, how many of you are engineers? Yeah. You guys hate that, right? It's like the worst thing that could happen. Engineers are kind of the worst thing that could happen if you're a manager and a manager, never mind. So, as you probably have read, like Zynga's been a real roller coaster. At one point we had 55% of the market share. We had 300 million active users. Think about that, right? Crazy. We'd launch a game like Fishville, where there were, the fun of the game was visiting a friend's tank and scraping the crap off their glass on their aquarium. Like, these are not great games, but that game got 7 million daily active users because we just pushed people around. We're like, oh, hey, Farmville player, if you just get to level 10 in Fishville, we'll give you this magical cow. Right? And it worked. And we were getting so drunk on the money we were making from our Ville games that we ignored other categories. Like, we didn't go after arcade. Meanwhile, Bubble Witch Saga was tearing it up. Candy Crush came later, but they were building that engine that would drive all these other great games. So you can't ignore what's happening around you, and you can't let success stop you. You can't stop there. You have to keep pushing. And Evan's nodding his head because his company Teespring is amazing, but he can never let up. And as entrepreneurs, you can't let up. You can be excited that you're successful, but you have to keep looking forward because otherwise you're going to get kinged. Which is what happened to us, right? I mean, Candy Crush is bigger than the biggest game that we ever created. And we've created, between Words with Friends and Farmville and Cityville, we've created 3 of the biggest games in the history of the Western world. And King did like 3x what we did. And Game of War is killing it. All these companies are killing it, and they're smaller and more nimble than we are. So now we're trying to get our startup edge back, right? So I can tell you guys, when I first signed up to come to Shift, I didn't think I would be working at Zynga. I wasn't working at Zynga. I was working for Evan as a consultant at Teespring and a lot of other companies. And I was traveling, and I was having a great time. And then I got the call from Mark, and he said, hey, I'm coming back to Zynga. Will you come back and will you help me? And I thought, you know what? Let's get on the roller coaster again. Because I care more about this company than I should. And whatever ideas you decide to pursue, you should care more about than is reasonable. You should be like a dog chasing his bone, because that's what it's going to take to succeed. If you're working on it just because you think you'll make money doing it, good luck. You should love it. You should love the people you work with. You should love the work you do. Because the stats are not kind, right? Like 9 out of 10 startups don't make it. So better to love the shit out of what you're doing and love your life if you're going to take the risk. And I encourage all of you to take the risk, because I would rather work on something that I love and fail than work on something that's just mediocre or doesn't get me excited or have my, give me fire. And that's win or lose. So when I go on these trips, so every 4 or 5 years, whatever I work on kind of starts to suck in some way. E-music, we got bought. That wasn't fun. Working at a public company is hard. Working for a giant company like Universal wasn't fun. So I took a trip. Then after E-music, after Zynga, I kind of been there 6.5 years. I wasn't doing my best work anymore. I felt kind of trapped by big company life. So I busted out and I took a trip. And each time I end up having an experience or seeing something where I learn a whole lot. And that happened while I was on this year off when I went to Stockholm. Specifically, I went to Spotify and talked to a bunch of executives about how not to screw up your rocket ship, which is really cathartic. And while I was there, I went and saw this museum called the Vasa Museum. And I really dug it. So that's, I don't know, you can't really see how big this ship is, but it's an actual ship. It's 360 years old, and it's called the Vasa. And the way these explorers worked was they'd raise a little bit of money from friends and founders. And they would try and hire a crew. The first thing you needed someone to build the boat. You needed a shipbuilder, basically a CTO. The next thing you really needed a navigator. You needed someone who knew how to find the treasure. And you needed some kind of a story about a treasure map, or where you think treasure is because of other treasure seekers and what they were able to pull off. Then what did you do? You've raised a little bit of money to get started. Then you got to go out and you got to go see the king. And the king would write the big check. And I'll tell you what happened with the Vasa. So the captain has never been a captain before, but he's worked with other captains and he's got a good story. And he's got, I don't know that I remember the name, what's a good Nordic name? Bjork? No, that's Iceland. Huh? Hans? Sure. Hans. Hans is the CTO. And then you find, it's not Ivan, is it? What's a good Nordic name, guys? Help me out. Sven. Sven is a good one. What was the first one I said? Olaf. Olaf and Sven. Got it. So Sven is your navigator. Thank you. I'm a little jet lagged. So Sven is your navigator, and you've never really been a captain before, but you've got a good story, and you've got Olaf, who is the veteran of this journey and this journey and this journey, and they've had some success. And you've got Sven, and he's, been a part of this one and this one. Sorry, ladies, they didn't have CTOs, they didn't have shipbuilders, never mind. There's no excuse for the lack of diversity. So they would go to the king, and then he'd say to the king, hey, fund my journey. I've got a great team, and here we go. And they'd roll out the scroll, and the king would look at the boat and then ask some questions and decide whether to get the big feather pen out and the wax seal and fund it, right? So the captain of the Vasa goes to the king, makes the pitch. The king says, okay, here's the thing. I'll fund your mission, but I want a second row of guns on the ship. I want 2 rows of guns. And this first-time captain says, yeah, no problem. Second row of guns, no problem. So he is funded, and he goes back to his team, and he says, great news, guys, we're funded. Let's go. And Olaf says, hey, this is great news. He says, yeah, listen, Olaf, one thing, you got to add a second row of guns. And Olaf says, what the hell are you talking about? I can't add a row. We're already halfway built. We're behind schedule. No one's ever done this before. It can't be done. It can't. And he says, you need to figure it out. I signed it. The king signed it. They're going to cut off our heads. We'll have no mission without it. You add that second row of guns. So they start construction, right? And they're getting close to launch. And the navigator says, Sven says to the captain, hey, captain, we got a little problem here. And he says, what? And he has some of the crewmen run back and forth across the horizontal axis of the boat. And they're in dock, and the boat goes like this, just from people running back and forth across it. And the captain says, what? What? And they said, this shouldn't be doing this. And the captain says, it'll be fine once we launch. We just need more water around the boat. And then it'll be fine. Just launch it and we'll be fine. And then, as was the tradition back then, they didn't really bring women and children onto the ship. It was considered bad luck. But the captain says, hey everybody, the king's coming to launch. There's going to be a band. You know what? We're just going to do a little trip around the harbor. This isn't the big trip. So bring your wives and kids on the ship. Let's go. So they sail out. Everyone's there. They sail out, and they're not even a mile from shore. And the captain says, what's the point of having 2 rows of guns if you don't fire them off? And so they lift up. Now there's twice as many doors where water can get into the ship. And they fire it, and it just goes thunk like that, fills up with water and sinks. Enough. So people swam to shore, and they had an inquest to figure out what happened and what went wrong. And guess who they blamed? Anyone? CTO. Exactly, they blamed the CTO. So I guess the moral of the story, and also, by the way, there's a lot more parallels. Back then the explorers were kind of, well, not my age, they're kind of your age looking around. And the average person on the ship was around between 18 and 22. And they worked in very tight quarters. And they didn't make much money, but they all made money if treasure was found. Sound familiar? So we are the explorers of our time, so I urge you to take care to find the right investors, listen for good advice. If you have an idea and you're not sure whether you should do it or not, then you probably shouldn't do it. It should be an idea that you can't get out of your head. It's like a song that won't stop playing. Do that idea. Pursue that idea, because that's going to be more fun to work on, and go for it. And when I'm here and I'm hearing these different pitches, I'm thinking, wow, I wish I could take this team and slam together with that team, and what could they do? What could Team Player do if they partnered up with Handball Statistics? Wow. And I just want all of you to take advantage of the tools that are out there for you and in the community, so that you guys can team up and partner up and use each other to decide what ideas you should chase. Now, the last thing I want to do, if these guys can play it, hey guys in the back, Zynga was nice enough to pay for me to come out here. Can you click that link? So I can show you guys a sneak peek of a game that we have coming out, and you're going to say, okay, this is not Farmville. Let me see if I can make it happen. Dun dun dun. Hey guys, could you guys click that link? Good news, bad news. It's on YouTube. Just search Dawn of Titans. Prepare to have your mind blown. There's no internet at the tech conference that's connected to the projector. No, that's not true. There is internet at the tech conference, but they didn't know I was going to do this. Thank you so much. I'm going to be at the party tonight. I'd love to talk to any of you if I can be of help. My email address is marcus@zynga, and thanks a lot.